Just going to go over an incident that occurred yesterday in the early morning hours, a little bit after 7. Start from the beginning. A police officer assigned to the 22nd District worked the overnight shift. He finishes up early in the morning, goes down to his locker, takes his uniform off and puts on his plain clothes and leaves the 22nd District, located 17th of Montgomery, en route home. While he's driving home in his personal vehicle in the 2100 block of Oxford, around Oxford just before Ridge Avenue, there's a crowd in the street and a vehicle, black BMW, blocking the intersection. So the officer patiently waits for the vehicle to move. Our cameras during this investigation showed he waited about 4 minutes, 3 red light cycles. At some point, he begins to blow the horn, asking for the car to move. At some point, a female associated with that black BMW becomes involved in a verbal altercation with the officer, back and forth. And then at some point, a male that we only know by the name of Duke, and I'll describe him a little more as this progresses, approaches the car. They begin to argue verbally. The officer's just asking for the car to be moved. He then is assaulted by this individual, Duke. Duke's described as a heavy-set black male. He has a beard. He's wearing all black, black pants and a black shirt during the course of this incident. At some point after the officer gets struck in the face numerous times, his left side of his face, he puts the car in park and exits the car. He identifies himself as a law enforcement officer, shows his wallet badge, and at that point, Duke produces a firearm. All right, he has that firearm, it's pointed near the officer. The officer then alerts an on-duty officer from the district that he has an incident going on, he needs assistance. That officer starts to where he's at from where she's at. At that point, another individual, we released some of these photos yesterday. This male's described as being 6'8". He's 24 years of age. He's wearing a white tank top and tan pants. He then becomes involved in an altercation with the police officer. They are struggling. The police officer at one point takes his firearm out and then reholsters it as they begin to fight for a weapon that he's saying the other individual has. At some point during that fight, his firearm, which is in his waistband, somebody orders the other individual take what he's got. So he took his firearm. His firearm is taken out of his waistband. The firearm that he's struggling over, he has a hand on it. The offender has a hand on it. At some point, he's able to get the magazine dislodged. It was an extended magazine. That drops it again, but the officer, due to his training, knows that there's another round in the chamber. So the officer then puts his hand on the trigger and was able to point the gun away and discharge one time. No one was injured, but he now knows that gun's empty. So now they continue to fight, at which time that gun drops to the ground, and this individual's backup now arrives, and they begin to struggle with numerous people in the crowd. It's a crowd, they're telling me it's at least a dozen people. It appears some establishment, it was open into the late hours of the morning, had let out, and that's where the crowd came from. So there's females and males in this crowd that were involved in this skirmish with the officer. The female on-duty officer attempts to stop this individual who was fighting with the officer. He was able to get away from that officer, jump into the BMW. The off-duty officer was, we believe, struck in the leg or run over in the leg during the course of his escape, and the other individuals escaped the area. All right, the off-duty officer was taken to the hospital. He had multiple injuries to his face, concussion. He also had bruising, and he was treated there at the hospital. Detectives arrived and started to look at video. They looked at the on-duty officer's body camera as well as city cameras that are there located on Ridge Avenue right by where the incident had occurred. They did take some images that we were able to put out yesterday to the media and to the on-duty officers that were working. As soon as we put out the images of the male in the white tank top and tan pants, an on-duty officer contacted investigators, said that he knew who the individual was, he knew where he hung. We used our camera system to watch that area. They seen the individual show up at G in Hilton in the 25th District. The black BMW was also on location. On-duty officers went to that location, took that male into custody. So he is now currently in our custody. The car has been towed, and he is pending charges. I'm not going to release his name yet. The DA's office is still working on his charges. We're going to ask for aggravated assault, simple assault, REAP, VUFA charges, along with possession of instrument of a crime. Now, while we were investigating that officer later in the day, females, approximately 3 females, showed up at the 22nd District. Those females were taken to the officer-involved shooting unit. They all gave interviews. At this point, no charges have been filed on those females. We're going to continue to investigate. We're not sure if they'll be charged or not, but at this point, no charges were filed. So we're no longer looking for the females that we released or the male in the white T-shirt. Public Affairs is going to release pictures of the individual we believe to be known as Duke. He has the black pants, black shirt. He also had a firearm, which he left that area with. We need to identify this individual and take him into custody. He's wanted for assaulting the officer as well as producing a firearm at this location. I'm not sure. The females were all in their 20s. Like I said, the individual arrested was approximately 24, and we believe that Duke could be anywhere between his mid-20s to 30s. Anybody else have any questions?
How long was the officer a police officer?
He was 8+ years. He's 42 years of age. He's been on 8+ years. Signed in the 22nd District.
So the guy who was 6'8", he's the one who was arrested?
He was arrested, 6'8". He was found. He was known to police. He's been taken into custody, and we will we'll let you know as soon as we're charges. We'll get his photo and his charges out to you.
Was he on driving the BMW?
He did drive away in the BMW, so we assumed that it was his. He had it later in the day when we were able to find him at G and Hilton.
And that's the vehicle that struck the officer?
Yes.
So the suspect in the white tank top, he also got into an altercation with the officer?
Yes, and we believe they fought over a gun, and that's the gun that was discharged. His gun, but the officer discharged it. Discharged it during the fight.
So the person in the white tank top, did he take the officer's personal firearm?
Well, he's believed it was during that struggle that the firearm was taken. We have not recovered that firearm yet. That firearm is a Glock 9mm, so 43X, and we are still searching and investigating to see if we can recover that firearm. That firearm's still missing.
And just to reiterate, the officer shot what is suspected to be the white tank top individual's firearm.
And then it dropped to the ground at the scene there, and we recovered that. All right, that gun had an obliterated serial number, so it did not come up to anybody. It did have an extended magazine, and like I said, 1 round was fired out of it.
Is it believed that Duke has this officer's personal firearm?
Well, we don't know. That's why we need to find Duke. 1, he assaulted the officer, and 2, we're still looking for that firearm.
So in essence, Duke started the altercation, the physical altercation. This second individual who's now in custody also assaulted the officer. And then was it just one officer, that officer you're fighting, you said dozens of individuals?
Yes, and then the other on-duty officer came, attempted to stop that individual. She wasn't able to get him into custody. She called for an assist. Other officers came, but at that point, they escaped the area.
What are your thoughts on how the officer handled this by firing one in the chamber?
Well, that, we've seen that before. You know, when Officer Friel was shot, the 3rd District officer that went into his defense did the same thing. He took on the individual, realized he had a gun without a magazine, knew there was one in there, and he was able to fire one into the ground to make that gun, to render that gun safe after Officer Friel was fired. It's very hard to do and know where that bullet's going to go, but at this point, we're very lucky no one got shot.
So both Duke and this arrested individual pointed a gun or had a gun?
Yes, that we know. So we have video evidence from our cameras of those firearms, and at least the one in Duke's hand, we could see it.
The 6'8" suspect, did he have any history with police?
I'm not going to get into that until we name him, but he was known to police. He was known to police.
Do you have an idea how long the officer's going to be out of service?
I don't. Now that it is considered a discharge, the district attorney will review the case, and he is injured. So as soon as he comes back from the injury, I'm sure they'll review the case and let him know.
That was officer treated and then released, or he stayed overnight?
Yeah, he was treated and released. Yeah, he had concussion and some bruising around his face. He was punched a few times in the head.
And where was he hit with the car?
It was the right leg was kind of run over, but I didn't hear of any major injuries from that. I know his pants showed that the car went over him.
You said that was at Oxford, and what else? Where-
2100 West Oxford, it's right before Ridge Avenue, Oxford and Bridge. All right?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.